Good morning, everyone. It is so good to see you. What an amazing day. Are you kidding me? This weather is off the charts. The colors are starting to change. Yes, you feel some temperatures changing as we enter into this magical season called fall, right? So, my name is Reverend Michael Rocque, and it is my honor, my privilege, my really, I feel, in some respects, my calling, if you will, to be doing this kind of stuff. And I don't take that lightly. To me, it's a gift. It's something that I've been doing for a long, long time. But I just love the opportunity to be able to get together with a group of people and talk about these deeper principles, this idea of having a spiritual experience, this idea of taking this thing inside of us called our divinity or our spirit, and then what do? We can actually do what the Fillmores did, which is to understand that when you start to tap into this thing that's inside of us, then all of a sudden things begin to change. We start to become aware that there's something bigger out there that we can connect with. And by taking the time and slowing down to do that, then all of a sudden we're able to see things, we're able to understand things, we're able to do things in our life that we couldn't do before we understood it. It's like this whole thing happens, this transformation happens, this healing happens, this energy starts to flow through you that we simply just don't have access to unless you slow down and you start to listen. And you listen to that little nudging, that thing that's tapping you on the shoulder that's saying, hey, pay attention, because I'm here. And specifically, what is that thing that's here? It's called your soul. And so when you actually start to slow down enough to listen to your soul, it's magic. Because your soul knows exactly what it is that you need to do to heal, to transform, to live a powerful existence, to be the divine spark that you truly are. And when you slow down enough to do that, then all of a sudden you start to go, wow. So you mean to tell me I can be having a conversation with somebody and God can speak right through me? Yes, you can. You mean I can be in a situation that I have no clue on how to get through the situation, and all of a sudden Spirit will flow through me and say, here's your answer, Mike. This is what you need to do in this moment. Where 3 seconds before that, I had no clue. Where you can look at things in your life that you've been stuck with, that you haven't been able to work through, things that have confused you and been problems in the past, all of a sudden you're able to show up in a completely new, different set of energy. And it's like you've now embodied this new aspect. It's like the 2.0 version of you, right? And all of a sudden it's like this new version of you can show up and go into a situation in the past where you may have felt stuck or confused or just can't figure it out, and now all of a sudden you just stand in that, you let Spirit come through you, and then all of a sudden you can handle it differently. And answers that weren't there in the past now all of a sudden show up. And so what happens is we get to do this magical dance. We get to fall in love with ourselves, and then we get to fall in love with this thing called God. This thing that has been, in my mind, tainted. This relationship with this thing called the divine that is one of the greatest gifts that we have. It is your birthright. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you've done or you haven't done. It doesn't matter because of who you are, which is the divine spark of God. That is magical. That is powerful. That is beautiful. Love lives there. Healing lives there. Transformation lives there. Everything that we want lives there. And it's real. It's not just listen to this crazy guy called Mike up here. It is real. And so that's what we do here at Unity. And we also decide to come together in what we call unity consciousness, which means that instead of looking at all of our differences, we instead can decide to embrace them. So we here at Unity, we embrace our differences. That's what we do. So instead of focusing on all the different things that make us different, which we can do, and if you want that, just walk out those doors. You see that all the time. But instead, what we decide to do is we say, you know what? We actually can be different. That's okay. In fact, that's beautiful. Thank God. There's differences. But what we're going to focus on is we're going to focus on unity consciousness, which is a real thing. There is power, there is energy in unity consciousness. And when all of a sudden you go, you know what, that's more important than our differences, look out. Then we come together in love. Then we come together and we can do some pretty magical things, which is what we're doing here. We're coming together as a group of people. We're holding each other. We're supporting each other. We're loving each other. We're laughing with each other. We're crying with each other as we go through and do this thing called life, which can be pretty fun. And it can also be tough at times. And in those moments, then we can hold each other. It is so good. It is so juicy. It is so real. This thing, this experience of your divinity is real. And you can live it. It's a choice away. It's one choice away. Yeah, I think I want to do that. Awesome. Let's do that together then. Let's do it together. So, super happy you're here in person, whether you're here for the very first time or you've been here before or whether you're joining us online. We couldn't be happier to have you here. I just want you to know how happy I am to see each and every one of you. It's just such a blessing. We've been having a conversation over the last 12 months. And I've been talking about this concept or this idea called the medicine wheel and how each one of the seasons are represented in the medicine wheel. And so for those of you that don't know, that haven't been joining us, just a quick recap. The medicine wheel is an ancient tradition that was actually found all over the world. And each one of those traditions show up a little bit differently. It is a powerful concept to use in terms of doing your own spiritual work. And when you look at the medicine wheel, it actually is in the 4 different directions. And each one of the directions represents a particular spiritual body, and it also includes some very, very cool things in terms of the work that you can do. So in the traditional medicine wheel, we talked about the east, which represented, anybody remember? The spirit. Somebody got it. Thank you. And then we talked about the south. The south represented which body? The physical body. Yeah, you guys are listening. I'm impressed. That's awesome. Awesome. The west that we're going to talk about today represents the emotional body. Yay. And then the north represents the mental, right? So, in this tradition of the medicine wheel, the reason it makes it so powerful is because it talks about the concept of balance. And that in order to follow this, in order to live happy and healthy, it's not just a matter of focusing on one thing. And let's just get real. Often what happens is we have a tendency to focus on 1 or 2 of these bodies, and we have a tendency to kind of forget about the other ones. So we'll pay attention to our physical body and our mental body, especially in this day and age, right? But then we'll forget about our emotional body, and we'll forget about our spiritual body, right? And so this concept, this idea really allows us to go deeper and deeper and deeper into this idea of balance within our lives, because when we get too involved with one of them, then there's another part of our life that kind of gets out of balance. And it's not okay. Well, I guess it is okay because we all do it. It's not like, remember, we don't do shame, blame, judgment, or guilt here. None of that. But if you notice, when you start to really focus on 1 or 2 of them and the other ones get out of whack, so does our life has a tendency to get out of balance, right? It's kind of an easy concept. And so today, what we're going to be talking about is the West, right? So let's talk about the West for a minute. The West represents our emotional body. It's about emotional intelligence and awareness. The season, it's fall. It's about introspection. It's about going within. It's about the earth. I want you to think about this time of year. What are all the farmers doing? They're harvesting their crops. What are they doing when they do that? They get dirty. They're rolling up their sleeves and they're diving into the dirt. It's getting dirty. In this philosophy, there is a death. There is a part of us that is dying. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And it's about initiation. Why? Because we are literally going from one part of our life and we're walking into another part of our life. Metaphysically, what does it represent? Metaphysically, we're talking about doing the deep inner work. Now, I know some of you sit there and go, well, wait a minute, what are you talking about? Deep inner work? What does that have to do with spirituality? Oh, everything. Everything. Because when you start doing the deep inner work, often what you'll find is there's things that are usually in here or they're stuck inside of us from a lot of different reasons, have a lot to do with what happens to us when we were growing up, and stuff is stuck there. And in order for us to be able to be free of that stuff, it's about doing the emotional work. Some people will refer to that as shadow work. Anybody hear of the term shadow work? Yes. Yeah. And it's really, really, really important we all do our inner work or the shadow work, right? So, there's a book that I've been following called Soulcraft by Bill Plotkin. Anybody ever hear of it? No? Some of you have, because I've mentioned it before. But I'm just going to remind you what he says. He talks about this idea of spiritually, we can go in two directions. We can go towards God. In other words, we can go up. That's one way of doing spirituality. And I would say the majority of us have been taught that our whole lives. But there's another way. And it's not going up, it's going where? It's going in. So we're going in and we're going down, right? So really the point that he's making, he's trying to tell us that in order for us to have a healthy system, we got to do both. We got to go both up and we got to go in. That to do one without doing the other is not complete. It's not going to give you what you really want. And then you have to ask yourself, well, okay, then why don't we hear about this? Why don't we talk about it? Well, it's really simple. Number one, our society, in case you haven't realized, is where? It's up here, right? And we've been told forever. Even traditional religions have told us to look where? Everywhere except here. And if you don't think that's intentional, you are wrong. Traditional religion has told us to look outside of ourselves because somebody knew that if they really knew the truth, if they let the cat out of the bag and they found out that you needed to go within, then guess what would happen? We'd be pretty powerful, wouldn't we? Yes, we would. And so we were taught to look outside of ourselves for everything. But the truth is, all your answers, everything that you want is right here. Everything that you want is inside of yourself. And that's the point that Plotkin is making. Yes, look up and outside, but dear God, please look inside of you. And spend time looking inside of there. It matters. You matter. What's inside of you matters. But why don't we do that as much? Well, he goes on to say in the book, every time we come around to the fall, there's a part of us that enters this time of change, right? We're seeing the leaves change. Everything is changing. The weather's changing, everything. And every time we come around to this dark passage, we have to find the courage to turn and face it. That's the problem. Is that often we don't have the courage to look within. Because a lot of us are scared to look in there because, my God, what might we find? Right? What's in there? He talks about this time representing a time of constriction, a time of inwardness, when the child of the summer must symbolically die to the childhood and be reborn as an adult. So there is a death. We are transitioning from this inner child. We're going from the summer, and now we're changing, we're transitioning over here. And we start looking within, right? Although, it's really great, he says, although the adolescent is seemingly at risk, the risk is more perceived than real. The experience is more psychological than physical. And yet, we treat it like it's physical. A lot of people I know, myself included, by the way, guilty as charged, feared going within, more so than I feared physical death. What could be in there? What could be in there, right? That thought of a part of us actually dying is what stops a lot of people from doing this work. It does. It's not easy work. It's not easy work to do your inner work. It is not easy work. It is not. But there is nothing that I would say that is more rewarding than doing that work. Because when we do it, then we find out that there's this part of us that's telling us who and what we are. But there's this other part of us, our ego, that's saying, oh my God, don't go there. Why? Because the ego is really, really comfortable. Really comfortable. It likes you just where you're at. It doesn't want you going anywhere. Nowhere. And when you start doing this inner work, then all of a sudden you start to change. And that's like, huh? Yeah, and the ego's really not happy with that in any way, shape, or form. But I really do feel this way about doing this work, that until we do this work, until this work has been done, is until we start the process of going within, that often what happens is we can remain feeling incomplete, we can feel lost, we can feel empty, afraid, and detached from our own soul and God. And I will just tell you that that was my experience. For a lot of my life, I didn't want to look within. I didn't want to go there. There was too much pain, way too much pain. And I just wanted to ignore it. So I just put a big, fat, happy face on. Life's great. Everything's fine. Wonderful. And inside, I was miserable. I was miserable, right? The ego is the thing that will try and convince you to do this. If you do it, the ego will try and tell you you are going to die. That's what it's going to do. So, the bottom line is the ego's message will always be to you, don't look here. That's what the ego is going to tell you. Don't look here. Don't want to go there. Don't look there. Don't. Right? This process that he talks about, it's a time of going toward your soul. We go downward towards the dark center, as he calls it. I love that. The dark center of our individual selves. What is in there? Ooh, what could be in there, right? And that's what scares people. That's what scares people. Is they're afraid of really what's in there. In truth, though, when you start to do this work, what you understand, it's not about ignoring it. It's actually about embracing it. That's what we do. We actually embrace it. We follow it. We don't resist it, but instead we get curious about what is inside. What's in there? What's making me tick? What's making me do this? What's making me do that? We start looking at these things, and we start to discover that all of a sudden it makes sense. Why we do some things really, really well, and we're really good at it, and why we don't at others, and why we kind of do things that might be harmful to ourselves. And we start to understand that there's patterns, there's habits that we picked up when we were growing up as kids that were more than likely put in our heads and in our being from our parents that aren't ours. And yet what happens is it gets programmed into us, and then we start moving forward, and we act like robots. Until you make a decision to do something about it, and you start to decide to do your inner work. And that's what the West is all about, doing that work. It's all about going in. It's all about going in. It's all about going in. It's where we get dirty. It's where we roll up our sleeves. We get messy because, you know what? We can get messy. For anybody that's done their own work, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It can get messy, and that's okay. It's where we start to look at our emotions and find out what's going on with these emotions. What's going on in there? Or should I say the lack thereof? Because for me personally, what I realized is I was so disconnected from my emotions, they were shut off. I didn't even know that. See, as a child, what I learned was I lived in a really unsafe environment, and what I learned was how to shut off my emotions. It was what I needed to do to protect myself. And so I was really good at shutting off my emotions, which served me beautifully when I was in that environment. But when you grow up as an adult, it can make it kind of tough to live without being fully connected to your emotions, right? And this is where we start to do the shadow work. This is where we start to go in and find out, well, why did I cut off my emotions? Why did I do that? And then we start going in there and looking at those things and understanding that often there is a part of us that got hurt and that's still there waiting for somebody to come back and rescue it and help it and move it along. That's shadow work, folks. That's what it's all about, right? Again, I think that it can be the most rewarding work that we can do, along with, again, we're doing the spiritual work, but we're doing the inner work. There's a balance, and that's what this is all about, right? I really do believe this. I really do believe that this is the area where most people neglect because they're afraid to take the time to find out what emotions are inside of them. They literally don't want to look. They want to ignore what's going on inside. Quite often, it's simply, again, it's too much pain, right? And I know certainly that was my experience for a long time. For a long time. So, a couple of points I want to make here, first of all, is a lot of you I know are involved with this type of work. I know you are because I know what you're doing and I talk to you, right? And so I want to fully acknowledge the people that are doing this work, fully. And the other thing that I want to say is every one of us is different in terms of what that work looks like for you is not what it's going to look like for me. It's just not. So some people don't need to do a lot of this work, and they feel good, and they feel happy, and they feel balanced, and it's good. So just understand we're all different in terms of how much work this is going to take. Everybody is different. Nobody is the same. Having said that, for me personally, it took a lot. It took a lot. I had a lot of stuff inside of there that I just, quite frankly, just didn't want to look at. And when I started doing that work and I went deeper and deeper and deeper, it's like all of a sudden my soul started to open up. And I started to understand and feel finally my feelings. And guess what? They weren't all pretty. They weren't. And so I had to process that. I had to go through this process. And so you might be saying, okay, well, how do I know? Mike, how do I know? And I would say the following is, if you're ignoring your emotions, if you're not processing your emotions, which we have every single day, if you don't feel emotions, if you don't know what your emotions are, or what they're trying to tell you, if you're seeing any of those and going, it might be a little bit of a wake-up call. A gentle nudge from your dear friend Michael that's saying, pay attention. Pay attention, pay attention, pay attention, right? Emotions are the language of your soul. I'm going to say that again. Emotions are the language of your soul, and it's a way your soul is trying to tell you what is going on inside. Emotions are the language of your soul. And they can act as a roadmap to your own healing. That's the power of your emotions. That's why it's critically important that as you start to do this work, you become aware of what's going on. You become aware of what they are trying to tell you. Don't pay attention to the slides up there. And so what I'd like to do this morning, Ray, sorry about this, buddy. I'd like to just take a minute, right? And I'd just like to spend a moment or two in meditation and really have you try to feel inside of you what is going on. Maybe you're having a great day. Maybe you're not having a great day. Maybe you've got questions, concerns, delusions, dilemmas, paradoxes, confusions. But what I want you to do is spend a few moments with this idea of, hey, what is going on inside of you this morning? Okay? So I'm just going to ask you to get comfortable in your seat for just a moment. And just relax. And go back into the space, this beautiful space that we've created for ourselves this morning. And I just want you to check in with yourself. I imagine, or you can physically do this, put your hand on your heart. And just say hi to yourself. Hi, Mike. How are you? A genuine, honest question you're asking yourself. And allow whatever to come up without any shame, blame, judgment, or guilt. We don't do that here. This is just a full acknowledgement of what's going on with you this morning. Our feelings are like a barometer. And so just give yourself a moment just to feel what's going on. How do you feel? What are your emotions trying to tell you? Are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you glad? Can you feel your emotions, your feelings? Can you identify them? Are they weak or are they strong? Can you name them? Where do you feel your emotions in your body? Are they in your heart? Are they in your stomach? Are they in your head? This is about you becoming aware of you and your emotional body. And again, we just stand in observation. And then just thank yourself for spending a few moments checking in. And then when you're ready to, you can open your eyes and start to come back. You are amazing. You are powerful. You are beautiful. You are needed. You are heard. You are valued. You are divine. You are complex, and yet you are simple. It's a divine paradox. Yes, we can sit here in unity and sing all the truth songs and talk about God. You know that's my wheelhouse, and I love to talk about that stuff. And yet, my experience has been that until you can get in touch with what's going on inside of your emotions fully and embrace them and accept them and love them, even the ones that we're not supposed to talk about, that you're going to be missing something. There's going to be a part of you that's not being able to be expressed because of those stuck emotions. We have our physical body and we have our mental body. We have all these bodies. This process of balancing all four of the bodies is a beautiful process that allows us to look through a lens that incorporates all of them. We don't ignore them. And so what I hope that you take away from our talk this morning is, wow, that's cool. So we can sit there and do the spiritual stuff. Yes, we can, but it's also important that you do the emotional stuff, that you go in. Some of us have more work to do than others. That doesn't make you right or wrong. It doesn't make you good or bad. It doesn't make you anything other than a human being that had an experience. Some of us that grew up in more difficult situations than others probably have a little bit more work to do than the rest of us. And that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you're better than. It doesn't mean you're less than. It just means you're human. Really what it means is that you decided, your soul decided, that coming into this planet, you wanted to learn a few things. Your childhood was a setup for those lessons, in case you don't understand that. You chose it. And I know some of you are going to be, are you kidding me? What on God's green earth did I choose that for? I'm one of those people. But you know, the truth is, looking back at that setup allowed me to have an experience of losing all of my power. And then I made a decision that I wanted to take it all back. So I went from losing it all in perception. That's not what really happens, but that's what I perceived it to be. And then all of a sudden I decided to go, wait a minute, I'm going to step back in. I'm going to go from being a victim into being a very powerful creator. And so I set that up. And so the first part of my life looked pretty tough. Like many of your stories are the same. I'm not the only one with these stories, and believe me, some of you have more tragic stories than I do, and yet you're here. And it was a setup. And then when we decide to heal, guess what? We're able to take all the power back. We're able to understand what happened and how we got here, and then we're able to move forward in a very powerful way. And that's the dance called life, kids. That's it, right? And then it's like, wow, then I get to basically actually live this beautiful relationship with my Creator, my God, which may be a little bit different or feel a little bit different. You might use different language. That's perfect, right? But you could get to do this amazing dance with my Creator, my own spirit. And it's limitless what that expression can look like. Limitless what you're able and capable of doing. And so, thank you for spending time with us this morning. It's been really fun to have you. I hope you take away a nugget or two in there. It's a lot. Next week, we're going to be talking about, or the next time I speak, we're going to be talking about how we can use the 12 powers. Each one of the directions has 3 powers with it. And so we're going to be talking about the 3 powers that go along with the West. So that should be fun, and I hope you can join us. Other than that, I just hope you realize how special you are, how loved you are, how appreciated you are, how much I'm just so grateful to have you here. And what an honor it is to be here with you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. God bless you.